At this time of the year, one thing that's on my mind, as well as many other FFA members' minds, is chapter banquets. In fact, just thinking about it takes me back to my very first chapter banquet as a freshman at Fairfield Community High School. I remember sitting right out there in the crowd, wearing what I thought felt like a cardboard box for an FFA jacket. Little did I know then, the countless opportunities that jacket would present me with over the next few years. I was proud as could be when Mr. Robbins called me up to pin my green hand degree on me. I sat in the crowd and watched as other members were honored for receiving their state and American degrees, just hoping that one day I could obtain such an honor. Soon after Mr. Robbins honored our chapter stars, it was time to install our newly elected chapter officer team. To my surprise, I was elected chapter treasurer. I was ecstatic, but also kind of nervous. I thought to myself, how in the world am I good enough to be an FFA officer? The next day, I was out in our horse barn. I was cleaning stalls and getting tack ready for an evening ride when I noticed this dustpan hanging up in my barn. And scratched in this old dustpan are the words, "A good example has twice the value of good advice." Now I have walked past and read this dustpan a million times growing up. But this time, it had a whole new meaning. It meant something different to me. I soon found my grandpa and asked him just how long this dustpan has been in the barn. He told me it's been there for as long as he could remember. He said your great-great-grandmother scratched that saying in there and hung it up. I then began to think about just everything this dustpan has seen while hanging on the wall. For it has seen everything from the bag phone to the iPhone. Some of you have probably never even heard of a bag phone. This dustpan has survived everything from the Great Depression to the farm crisis of the 80s and stood true to still be there today. For it knows the joys and discomforts of agricultural life, just like many of you. No matter what was going on in the world, my family lived by this quote: "A good example has twice the value of good advice." Now growing up, a good example was always presented by my grandparents. They showed me the example of hard work and loyalty to your employer. On both sides, my grandparents have worked over 30 years in their positions as factory workers, coal miners, and oil producers. Right in my own home, my parents have shown me the true example of never stopping before the job is done and always working hard to provide for others. In fact, a good example is what led me to FFA. I remember countless dinner conversations between my mom and dad and stories told about their time in this organization. They both accredit so much of the people they are today to their time in the blue and gold jacket. My mom especially. If you were to ask my mom what her favorite part of FFA was, without hesitation, she would quickly tell you her advisor, Mrs. Jennifer Tim. Mrs. Jennifer Tim always expected the most out of her students. She knew where each student's comfort zone was and pushed them right to it and a little farther. My mom claims if it was not for Mrs. Tim, she would not be where she is today. You see, if it hadn't been for that fire that Mrs. Tim started in my mom over 20 years ago and for her love for the FFA, I would not be here today. You see, that example you are setting has the power to not only impact one life, but potentially many future generations to come. Throughout my life, I was also always inspired by Lane Frost. Not only because he has a pretty awesome name, but because of his accomplishments. For those of you who may not know, Lane Frost was the 1982 National High School Rodeo Bull Riding Champion. He moved on to become the PRCA World Champion Bull Rider in 1987 and was soon inducted into the Pro Rodeo Cowboy Bull Riding Hall of Fame. He accomplished all of this in just the short 25 years that he walked this earth. Now, even with his extensively stacked resume and all these accomplishments and buckles won, what truly catches up my eye about Lane is his character. No matter what stage he was on throughout his life, he never lost sight of who he was. He always took those extra moments to make sure he signed all of the autographs and had all of those conversations. You see, Lane made it in life. He didn't have to stay those extra moments or sign those extra autographs, but he wanted to. Lane knew the power of investing in others as well as investing in the future. Out of the countless documentaries and family interviews I have watched about his life, one common theme that they all say is that Lane never lost sight of who he was. The example that Lane set and carried on is one that lived through many generations. You see, I was never alive at the same time that Lane was, nor did I ever even talk to him. But his example still lives on throughout today. Good examples can be found in past or present generations, just like Lane. I hope that this speech is not what impacts you, but the example that myself, as well as others, have tried to set does. No matter who you are listening to this, whether you're a mom, a dad, a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, a chapter officer, a chapter member, or a grandparent hanging up a dustpan on the wall for future generations to see, you are that example to someone. We are all in a leadership position in life, whether we realize it or not. Someone is constantly following that example we are setting. To ensure that example we are setting is a good one, we must give every day everything we have to be a better person and to grow as an individual. I challenge each of you to set that good example for others. Just like my family, always remember, a good example has twice the value of good advice. Now go out into this world and be that good example for others.